Okay, guys, can you actually hear what I'm saying? We had a whole lot of technical difficulties. Okay, guys, can you actually hear what I'm saying? Actually, um, could not get the stream to go, but we've got the stream hopefully up and going now. So I should be able to hopefully see what we're saying, and hopefully you guys can hear me here in the garage. Awesome, loud and clear. Cool. So I've got a little work to do here on this fine Dodge Journey. So I thought I would throw you guys up on the camera so we could hopefully talk. And while I'm wrenching away on the Journey here, we're not doing anything cool or special. We are just replacing some spark plugs. But this thing has 146,000 miles. So as far as I know, the spark plugs are potentially original. So these spark plugs should be pretty nasty if they truly are original, but we will find out. Let's see, Brad Miller, you got your drive shaft done at the dealership. So far, I haven't had any comeback with the new drive shaft making noise again. So hopefully yours lasts. Did your dealership give you any troubles on the replacement? Did you have to fight with them on getting the new one installed, or were they aware of the service bulletin, or did you come in there with a printed off bulletin saying, hey, do this for me? No issue. Well, that's good. Like I said, there's been a few people that had messaged me basically saying that their dealership wasn't aware of the new service bulletin, and that they kind of had to fight with them about, getting that service bulletin done. Heck, I had somebody message me the other day saying, hey, my truck's been sitting at the dealership for like months and months. They won't release, they bought it used, and the dealership wouldn't release the truck to them because it had a open recall, which is kind of a normal thing for dealerships on used vehicles, depending on their policy. And the guy was basically saying, hey, do you know when this recall is going to come out? And the recall was already out the month previously. So I messaged him back and said, hey, let him know that recall's already out, came out last month. So hopefully you can get your truck back. So it just depends on, how good or how nice your dealer is on looking things up like that, on how quickly, they're going to get things done. Let's see. WJ believed it dropped a valve at 147. The lift run will not sit in place. Ooh, that's weird. So a lot of times, yes, your valve seat can drop and cause the rocker to kick off. But if you have the valve cover off, which you probably do if you're already looking that deep, then you can, if the valve height is where it should be. I've had a whole bunch that are just bad lifters that have caused rockers to kick off. Now, if the valve seat truly is dropped and it's holding the valve open, then yeah, it's going to need a cylinder head or the cylinder head pulled off. And if you can find a machine shop to replace the valve seat, then that's kind of your only option if you truly do have a dropped valve seat causing the valve to drop down in the cylinder. Yeah, that Ripatoon drive shaft, that did look pretty cool. I was kind of eyeing one of those, and then luckily the new MOPAR drive shaft came out. So again, I'm interested to see if any of the mini TRXs that I work on at work will come back with with the clunk eventually or not. And yeah, possible fix obviously would be the new cylinder head for that 4.7 if it truly did drop a valve seat. But again, I would be really sure before you go through the effort of tearing that engine apart, because like I said, I've had a lot that were just the lifter that had failed and isn't pumping up all the way, causing the valve, or excuse me, causing the rocker to kick off. So double check, make sure before you go through the effort of, tearing that, engine apart. Now, guys, if you are just jumping on here, we're out in the garage today doing a little bit of work here on this 3.6 liter Dodge Journey. And by work, I just mean we are putting some fresh spark plugs in this thing. It's got like 146K, and we don't really have any clue if it's ever had a tune-up done. So it is very overdue if it hasn't been done. Okay, so yeah, you just, replied and said you've got new lifters in and it still won't sit properly. So yeah, probably more than likely that valve seat has dropped a little bit, holding the valve open. So yeah, it's not going to sit correctly on there. So that is the only other thing you could do. You could get a cylinder bore or a mechanic's bore scope. You can buy them super cheap online. You can pull like a spark plug out, put the camera, it's an inspection camera, down through the cylinder. Some of them you can turn the camera to look back up, and you could, like, without a question of a doubt, verify that you've got a valve seat dropped. You can, visually see with that bore scope inspection camera. So that would be something you could do before you go tearing into the motor if you want to 100% confirm. Why does my TRX sound like there's a bunch of quarters in the cats? Now, there is the normal TRX exhaust noise. I assume that's what you're talking about, with them kind of normally on cold start. It's worse than once they're warmed up, but they still kind of do it when they're warm. When you start up TRXs, they have a really unique, is what we're going to say, noise or exhaust noise. There is actually a service bulletin from Chrysler or MOPAR talking about that unique exhaust noise, and Chrysler is blaming it on the exhaust manifolds. Their design of the exhaust manifolds, with the exhaust pulses bouncing off the inside of that exhaust manifold, that is what produces that weird noise. And I can kind of confirm that is correct, because I do have one TRX that comes in that has long tube headers, and that truck doesn't make the noise. Now, it also doesn't have cats, so that kind of is changing multiple things at once. But yeah, that truck doesn't have our weird chirpy noise when it's started up and running. So again, it is supposedly just the exhaust manifolds. Most or all Hellcats and SRTs for that matter have really nice, almost tubular kind of header runner style exhaust manifolds, which is great for flow, great for performance. Due to the packaging size on a TRX, we have the very restrictive, if you want to call them, log style exhaust manifolds on those trucks. So they are very not performance. They're just kind of a bolted on. They look no different than like a 5.7 Hemi truck exhaust manifold. So I assume you've got a lot of exhaust pressure trying to punch out of that cylinder head, and it's going into this kind of inefficient manifold, making that noise. Like I said, the truck that has long tube headers, that thing's pretty darn nice and quiet for that weird noise on startup. Ooh, 2014. Let's see. Hold on. We're going back up to Brad. Can I wait for my ESC date? It says, can I wait for my ESC date? I'm not sure what ESC, other than electronic stability control. I'm not sure what you're referencing. Let's see. 2014. Patriot, getting an exhaust or oil smell in the cabin. So not so much exhaust issues really that I can think of. But we do have, 2014 Patriots getting a little old at this point. So we do start seeing gasket issues on those things. Valve cover gaskets will be greasy. Front timing cover will be kind of greasy, and oil pans really, really like to leak on those things. So if we've got one of those that's kind of burning onto the exhaust catalytic converter back there, I could definitely see a, burning oil smell, but we really don't have many exhaust issues as in cracked cats or manifolds or something like that. So I would assume we've got an oil leak getting onto the exhaust somewhere. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes, Brad, you're, okay. Yes, the ABS recall thing. Yes. So that is, again, I always, you're asking, should I just wait for it to be done or do I need to drop it off? It's always hard to say because a lot of people will make an appointment at a dealership for a 9 o'clock appointment. Oftentimes that is the time you're able to drop the vehicle off. That doesn't necessarily mean at 9 o'clock sharp, a technician's going to be up there doing the thing. If there's a technician available that's able to immediately pull the vehicle back into their stall, that is a quick software update. We plug into the vehicle, we do an ABS software update. You then have to do a few other routines. Hopefully the tech is smart enough to read the instructions. We have to do a ABS initialization after the software update, a brake pedal calibration, and then I thought there was a third thing. Oh, yes, there is. The electronic parking brake needs to have the rear electronic parking brake actuators relearned. So you've got to do the software update and then all three of those. But I mean, that is a 15-minute, half-hour ordeal once it's actually back in the shop. But again, if there's not a technician available and you've got to wait multiple hours before the truck actually gets into the shop, then it's kind of up to you on if you're wanting to wait. But if you can get into the shop or get the truck into the shop in a timely manner, then it would be a quick ordeal. I just did one on a good buddy's truck that I work on Friday. He pulled in, I had it back there flashed, and he was back up and out of the service aisle in a really short amount of time. So it just kind of depends on how quickly that dealer is actually going to get their act together and get to work. But again, we do run into things where we've got, two other vehicles in front of that, and then we've got two other vehicles waiting, and that's where it runs into issues on things. But the actual recall process is quick and easy. pending the other issue that we run into from time to time. Our dealership scan tool software is internet based. You know, we plug in a wireless pod is what it's called into the vehicle, and it connects to the Wi-Fi router on the wall, and then we connect with our laptop and, you know, do the things we need to do. Guess what? When the internet's down, when the Wi-Fi's down, when Chrysler's website is down, we are absolutely SOL, which happened just the other day. We could not do anything for most of the day. And unfortunately, a modern vehicle at the dealership requires the scan tool to do about 90% of the things. So it's pretty bad when that doesn't work. And then that 30-minute recall turns into a full day ordeal because we're waiting for the system to come back up. So yeah, bad things can happen. John, let's see, been watching for a while, picked up an 04 WJ 4-liter Select Track. That's a good one there. So 04 last year, final edition, if you will, of the WJ. So it's got all of the newest updated things versus some of the previous ones. 4-liter is a good choice because it's an old tractor motor. The thing's going to run forever for the most part. And Select Track is good because that is my favorite transfer case in a WJ with the 2-0 drive position. And you don't have the darn clutches in the transfer case that are going to be worn out at this point. So yeah, that is a good buy there. And they're getting harder and harder to find that are in any sort of decent shape. I've kind of not been able to pick up any here recently because they're I'm always trying to find them for cheap or broken or whatever. And here lately, I have been not lucky on finding anything. But I always do keep a lookout on Marketplace, and normally I'm throwing some lowball offers at people. Yeah, I'm that guy on Marketplace throwing a lowball offer, but a lot of times when they're broken, nobody else is wanting to buy them, and I'm the only guy there looking to pick them up. And I don't think I've ever had, speaking of this Dodge Journey here, I don't know that I've ever had one of these apart because none of this is looking very familiar. Obviously, this is the same engine as all the other. This is a 3.6. This would be in a Wrangler in literally 90% of our lineup, but all the intake plenum stuff is always a little bit different on each make and model. So that's, again, I primarily am only ever working on Jeep stuff at work, not normally a Dodge Journey. For a post-warranty 1500, would you go MOPAR catback exhaust or a brand like Borla? Ooh, I think if you're talking about like the MOPAR Performance catback, I think that is made by Borla, or at least it used to be. I guess I haven't done a recent MOPAR catback, if that makes sense. I've done some previously, and they had like Borla mufflers. So double check or see if you can somehow verify if the MOPAR catback is still Borla. But because if so, you'd probably be better off buying a Borla one that's not rebranded by MOPAR, that's marked up for even more than you could go out and find a Borla on, online. Now, the other thing you've got to be mindful of is, if you care, with your 1500 is going to be MDS. That Hemi, if we're talking Hemi, I assume, is a, MDS, where it cuts down into 4-cylinder. Depending on the style of exhaust, you can get some really bad drone when it's in MDS mode with an aftermarket exhaust. There's just something to think of if you're towing a bunch or doing a lot of highway and that thing's going to be in 4-cylinder mode. You could have some drone. So try to do a bunch of research on, which catback is going to work best for you if you care about that potential for a bunch of drone. Let's see. There's a ton of WJs in Chicago. Let me know if you want to drive one. Absolutely. I need like a constant flow. One every couple of months. No, I don't know. There's always some elsewhere. I'm just always. Normally it is me by myself with the truck and trailer going to pick one up. So I'm always kind of I'm trying to find it for as reasonable price as possible. And I hate to drive too darn far and it end up being a rusty pile of junk and I'm driving all the way back home. So that's why I've not really ventured too much further than 2-ish hours away, 2 or 3 hours away from Wichita, because I really don't want to get burnt on driving all the way there and not finding a good one. I drove like 2.5 hours one day to go pick one up. The guy said it was perfect, no rust. Crawled underneath the thing. The first thing I did, I got there, looked up the normal rocker location, and yeah, it was real rusty. And I said, "Man, you said it was no rust." Well, the body's good. Well, it's a unibody, man. It's all the same thing. So it's just kind of hard to go too far for me. Obviously, also working a normal Monday through Friday job, so I've only got kind of the weekends to make these adventures to go find something. But I think I am up to like 13 or 14 saved now, which is kind of cool. I think one of those was obviously one of those was my personal WJ that I had for a long time, and then one of them was that WK, that V6 WK that I had, which was actually a really darn nice vehicle. I was pleasantly surprised owning that. I don't even remember what year it was. It was like an '07, I think, WK, which is the third generation Grand Cherokee. And, like I said, that was the worst Grand Cherokee, the worst year, worst engine, but that thing drove really nice. I I kind of enjoyed owning that for the short time that I did. One thing you don't want to see when you're tearing apart or taking the engine bay apart is ripped up insulation. That means we had a mouse some point somewhere in this thing. So hopefully we don't have any chewed wiring. This vehicle doesn't have any issues. We aren't trying to, address an issue or fix a problem. It just has 140 something thousand miles, and we don't think the spark plugs have ever been replaced. So we're going to, that's what we are diving into today. If I can figure out how to get a Dodge Journey intake manifold or the airbox apart, because like I said, I don't think I've ever had one of these apart. And I'm so far not a big fan. There is no hose clamp from this air intake tube to the throttle body. It looks like just a slip fit, but there's like no fasteners. So I'm trying not to break anything. Wow, that's a really dumb design. Yeah, like I said, there is no hose clamp from the tube to the throttle body, just a goofy gasket press fit thing. Let's see. Chad, you've got a 2000 WJ with manual HVAC controls. Ooh, very poor airflow from the vents. Pulled the blower motor down, verified the recirc door was still intact. Ooh, you already kind of answered what I was going to suggest. Now, the only thing it was more of an automatic. I was going to say make sure the recirc door hasn't broken and fallen down, but you've already done that. The only other thing I can think of that I have seen, if that thing has ever had a blower motor resistor replaced or the blower motor replaced. I guess, well, you've got the blower motor out. Make sure it spins easily. I've pulled a whole bunch of blower motors out, and the blower motor is like insanely stiff. Like, it'll still spin with the power, but when you turn it by hand, it is so heavy. Like, the bushings have rusted inside of that blower fan. So I guess make sure the blower fan spins easily. That would be one thing. And then I have seen a handful of WJs come in with poor airflow, and the blower motor is wired backwards, if that makes sense. So whether the blower motor was replaced previously, the blower motor resistor, we had a while there where aftermarket blower motors were aftermarket blower motor resistors were wired internally backwards. So it was spinning the blower fan backwards. So you still had like some airflow, even though it was blowing backwards, but it was insanely reduced. Now, the repair for that was the two blower motor wiring connector, the two wires for the blower motor connector. I was taking the pins out of the connector. You've got to take the little lock out, de-pin that connector, and flipping the two wires to be the opposite direction, plugging it in, and all of a sudden you had really good airflow. So I would double check that whether you or someone else has replaced a blower motor or blower motor resistor. You could verify that our fan spins freely, and then if so, make sure the fan is not spinning backwards, and that would be kind of hard to just visually be able to look and tell. So you might flip that wiring and see if it takes care of it. If not that, then we've got some obstruction in the case, which is not a common WJ thing. So whether we've got a bunch of dirt packed on the heater core or the evaporator core causing a lack of airflow, that might be what we're having an issue with. But again, that is not a common WJ thing. That is, yeah, something weird and unique to yours. But yeah, make sure that blower motor is not spinning backwards before you start tearing out the HVAC case on the poor thing. Goodness gracious. Wow. Okay, so the air box, this air plenum does not look like it will come out with the intake in the way. That is interesting. I have not ran into that. Again, not being a Dodge Journey tech, but I guess once the intake manifold is out of the way, we'll be able to move that out of the way and get to our spark plugs. I recently picked up a set of these gear wrench. These are like extra long. One end is an offset. The other end is a flex head ratcheting wrench. These things have been amazing. They're like 10 through 18 or 19, and they work really well for alignments also. You're able to get, this tool really far up into the frame control arms of a vehicle. So these things have been really, really awesome. These 120 tooth gear wrench, extra long ratchet wrenches have been real nice. I was hoping to get a spark plug out here real shortly, but I've just been talking on motor seems to spin freely and run wide open, but I will check the wiring. Yeah, like I said, the wiring won't look bad or broken, but yeah, for whatever reason, I've had a handful come into the dealership with really poor airflow, and lo and behold, you end up finding out that the fan's spinning backwards. You change the polarity, at the wiring, and all of a sudden it's got good airflow. So that's at least something free that's not too bad to try. So we are almost ready to pull this intake. I need to get a very special tool here. On 3.6s, on most of them, we've got brackets on both sides of the intake manifold. We've got Over here, we've got a couple of a single bracket with two 10mm nuts. On this side, you've got two brackets that go all the way down to the cylinder head. Typically, I guess the proper thing to do would be to, get enough stuff so you can loosen these brackets. But unfortunately, there's heater hoses in the way, so you couldn't even get to the bolts. The quick and easy thing to do that doesn't cause any damage, once you get the 10mm bolts out here, you're able to bend these brackets with this very, very sophisticated pry bar here and get these out of the way. And then, like I said, when you go back together, you just bend them back with the same pry bar, and then you can get the nuts back in and everything is happy. Let's see. Grand, I was wondering what your thoughts on the new Hurricane Inline 6. Oh boy. I've actually thought about starting a new little weekly series of videos, I guess, called like This Week in the Shop, something along those lines, that I do like at the end or on the weekend, and kind of not just stuff that I've done in the shop, but kind of weird or cool things that happen at the dealership, whether that's a engine that's blown up and again, some other technician is doing it, but take a few pictures and then at the end of each week, sit down and talk about, what weird, cool things, what cool, weird recalls came out. But the Hurricane Inline 6, that's one of the things. Being a employee of Chrysler, I really try not to talk poorly on our stuff, because I do know Chrysler watches my videos, because I've had them get with me on a few things, or get with somebody who's had to get with me about something that I've said that they've not liked. So I've always tried to be very positive about our products, but me getting into, This Week at the Shop video series, if we do that, I would be talking about a lot of negative things about our product lineup. So that's my only weird thing. And one of the big negatives in the shop right now is that darn Hurricane Inline 6. So I hope that you don't have, or I don't know even how to word this. If you have one, I hope I'm not poorly talking about it here to you, but we've got a whole bunch of issues with that Hurricane Inline 6. The thermostats, the kind of big thing off the bat, the thermostats are almost 100% fail rate right now. They are failing and typically setting a thermostat code, which is, what they would do, but the Hurricane engine thermostats are failing closed and overheating engines and being driven until they're hurt. So you've got thermostats failing, sticking closed. We've got catalytic converters melting on those things. I've got one at the shop right now, a low mileage one that has the catalytic converter melted. We've got engines failing, luckily not at our shop, but around the country. There's a ton of them that have had catastrophic failures. Let's see, thermostats, catalytic converters. Oh, misfires. My goodness, they're coming in hordes with misfires, whether that's the front half of the motor, 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6 with misfires. And there's some software updates and there's, different things, but that engine right now, I would advise against. I'm hopeful in a few years they've got all the bugs worked out and it's a great engine, but man, right now I am unfortunately recommending people hold off on that thing just with the amount of issues. We, again, have them pretty constantly in the shop. The thermostats are a nightmare to put on. The catalytic converters are a nightmare to put on. The engine is not nice to work on right now. So yeah, that's unfortunately my Hurricane suggestion, or lack of suggestion right now, is hold off, don't get one, wait a few years if you can, and yeah, go from there. A bunch of people are always on the Jeep Wrangler forums going, man, I wish Jeep would just put that Hurricane Inline 6 in there, because they're reminiscing of the 4-liter Inline 6 MOPAR engine. This is not that. This is a massively complex twin turbo with hundreds of coolant lines and boost tubes, and It's rough. It's real rough. They better hopefully get better, or I'm going to have to quit because it's it's really bad to work on. Um, let's see. TRX have a grinding groan noise when the try shifts from first to second under moderate power. It will do it once after start. Transient cold. Boy, that is weird. I've got. Let's see. Groan grind noise when the truck shifts. Hmm. That's a weird one. I don't know. I guess if it were in my stall at work, I would be checking transmission fluid level first. If in the morning, let's see, because I think, let's see, once it will do it once after start, trans temp. Oh, hot or cold, then it's gone the next drive. That's a weird one. I don't know. Again, if it were in my stall at work, if you brought it into me at work, I would be plugging into the vehicle, checking for codes or software updates first. That's always the easy, quick thing to do. Pending we have no codes and no software updates, I would be getting the vehicle up to temperature and checking the transmission fluid level. If our transmission fluid level is good, I would then be doing a transmission quick learn, which is what our scan tool can do to kind of relearn the shift points. Doing all of that before we start diving into looking inside the transmission, looking inside the transmission pan. So again, that doesn't really help you that might not be able to do those things yourself, but hopefully maybe the truck's still under warranty. If it's under powertrain warranty, 5 years, 60,000 miles, and you've not modded the thing to the end of its life, then take it into your dealership and make them fix it. Have them duplicate it and have them take care of it, or at least get it documented while you're still under powertrain warranty. Because even if it doesn't do it, but the dealership has a written repair order with the issue, you can kind of sometimes get away with it dragging out the process a little bit longer because you brought it in while it was still under warranty. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Yeah, grand again. Yeah, not wanting to talk trash again. I try to be positive, and like I said, I know that Chrysler watches my videos because I've been in trouble or been talked to a couple of times about things said or things that I've done. My TRX, I have a video of my TRX showing how to install passive entry, the programming process, and kind of complaining that Chrysler or Ram didn't offer the passive entry as standard on a 70 plus $1,000 truck. Chrysler didn't like that, and I got my friend who works for Chrysler called me personally and said, "Hey, man, they're not real happy about you talking poorly about this, yada yada yada, and the process." I so out of respect to my buddy, I took the video down, edited out a few things that I said. Again, I wasn't being ridiculous, but still edited out a few things and re-put that video up just because I don't want to get my buddy in trouble for being a friend of mine, if you will. So yeah, it's always a kind of a sensitive subject when I work for the manufacturer. Again, I'm not a Jeep Dodge Chrysler employee. I'm an employee of a dealership, but it's still kind of the parent looking over you if you're employed for that manufacturer, if that kind of makes sense. Favorite Mopar engine? Boy. I guess it kind of depends on what product line. On a the 3.6, not that it's some cool big powerhouse, but man, I would take a 3.6 over, our, if we're talking Wranglers, our 4-cylinder turbo. Mom's driving a 2015 Wrangler, dad's in a 2020 Wrangler. Both of those have 3.6s. My 24 Wrangler that I had for that short time was the 3.6. Obviously, our Hemi stuff is the 6.4 liter is always a fun engine in a SRT Grand Cherokee, or our Scat Pack stuff. And then, yeah, sure, the 700, 800, 900 horsepower Hellcat stuff is always really fun. And those things have been really bulletproof. Our 5.7, of course, has cam and lifter issues from time to time. So that's kind of not cool having to gut your engine apart. But typically the 6.4 and the 6.2 are pretty darn bulletproof engines if you're not modding them, again, to the end of their life. Yeah, okay, so S140S reset trans adaptation. Okay, you've reset the trans adaptation, still does it. Okay, so again, that is one of the parts of doing that quick learn, if you will. So when we hook up our factory scan tool and do the transmission quick learn, the first step of that is it's clearing the adaptive memory, and then we go out and drive the vehicle, and it sometimes it's a stationary quick learn, but the transmission is applying all the clutches, or it's checking the clutch volume index for each clutch pack in that transmission, so it can kind of relearn how much fluid volume it needs to apply to make correct shifts. So that's kind of my thought again. So yeah, you already have a good thought on the mechanic side of things, since you're already trying a few things. But yeah, like I said, if it's not too modded powertrain engine transmission mods, I guess I'd be taking the thing into the dealer, checking for updates if you hopefully have a competent dealer in your area. 2017 Jeep Wrangler when climbing hill. Yeah. So yeah. So I believe you're talking about like not off-road hill climbing, but on the highway, if you're pulling a little, even a small hill or a increase in grade, you've got it's downshifted or it's not shifting up, and it's just sitting there revving away, even though you think it should be. Yeah, that's depending on the gear ratio on the Jeep and the size of the tires and the wheels and all of that. Engine or transmission is looking at the calculated engine load. And if it sees it's over X amount of percent, I don't know the percent offhand, it's going to sit there and just hold whatever gear you're in. I wouldn't think you've got any issues. If you did, you would have a check engine light on. That 2017 Wrangler is going to have a NAG 1 transmission. That is a Mercedes-Benz 5-speed transmission. That is a great transmission. It's getting old, obviously, at this point, but it's a darn good transmission. We really don't have issues with the NAG. That thing, and again, if you do, it's going to have a check engine light on for gear ratio errors or input speed sensor or something like that. But if you don't have a light on, I wouldn't be too concerned. Yes, it's annoying that it's sitting there holding gears going up hills, but it's probably not broken if it's not got a check engine light blaring at you on the dash. Any chance Chrysler is still replacing the heated seat element? Yeah, so funny you say that. I've done 2 in the last couple of months. If your Jeep, your O2, has the recall still active for the heated seat elements, I guess you might get a dealer that complains and say, oh, that's too old, we can't do it. They're lying. Yes, those elements are still available. Like I said, I did 2 in the last couple of months, that old WJs that came in, probably not even knowing they had the recall. Our service department is pretty darn good and obviously checks every single vehicle that comes into the dealer. And yeah, 2 WJs I got to do heated seat element recalls on just recently. So yes, as of a few months ago, parts are still available for those. And they can be done. So if your heated seat elements don't work, which they probably don't, go in there and get you some free ones at your dealer under the recall. Now I'm going to be really disappointed when we finally get this intake off and all of our spark plugs are like new and not worn out, because it's always fun getting to actually replace some worn out, tired parts. Let's see. I'm trying to think what the other recall. So your O2 Grand Overland probably has the trailer hitch recall, which your Overland should have come factory with a trailer hitch, so that will be a non-issue. Your other recall is for your airbag control module. That potentially still is open if that Jeep hasn't seen a dealer in a long time. That just is replacement of the, again, the airbag module. They were having the side curtain, or excuse me, the side impact sensors incorrectly reporting and having airbags go off. I've never personally seen one in my life, but it must have been a large enough issue that they issued the recall. So they do have to pull the center console up to get to that module, which lives behind the shifter area. So be mindful, as our WJ center console plastics are getting kind of old and tired, that some of them get a little crispy when they're coming apart. But hopefully you've got a tech that can actually, you know, be mindful of your WJ like I would be. So we've almost got, this is the world's longest tune-up since I've been talking here instead of actually working. Here is our ridiculously huge Dodge Churney intake piece that is underneath that wiper cowl area. Boy, this thing has, I was going to say, you guys probably can't tell, but you guys, I'm looking at the stream here. You guys can absolutely tell this thing is, she's been a dirt road Jeep, or excuse me, I'm assuming it's a Jeep since I only work on Jeeps. It's been a dirt road vehicle most of its life because she's real dirty under here. Okay. Moment of truth to see if our spark plugs are actually original and worn. They're pretty nasty. I guess I was maybe assuming a little more wear. I'll bring them up to the camera here in a second. Yeah, oh yeah, they're pretty decent. I'm trying to find like a real bad one so we can actually see. Yeah, they're all pretty evenly, or they're all pretty similar is the word. Words are hard. Let's see. Okay, so we've got, all right, we'll see how clear this is going to be here. If we can focus. Okay, so there is our brand new plug, and then 100 and potentially 40 some thousand mile spark plug. I do notice that, trying to focus, all of this white deposit stuff, I find that on a whole bunch of 3.6 liter spark plugs, and I don't ever really know, is that coolant, is that oil? I don't know. It's always kind of weird, and it's always kind of built up and caked up on those plugs. But there's our gap difference. I don't know, maybe what, twice the gap compared to that small gap on our new one ish, maybe. So it's at least a beneficial tune-up. Again, I hate to go this far into something and then to finally pull the spark plug out and they look brand new. That's always kind of a bummer, but it does happen from time to time. Now you guys get to see my lack of spark plug torque. I don't know. I have done mechanic things for so long that you kind of have a good feel for how tight or not stuff should be. So you end up just kind of going by feel a lot of the times on non-critical torque stuff, if that makes sense. When you're putting engines apart together, absolutely, I've got a torque wrench out and making sure it's there. Everything else, you're just, again, you've done it for long enough. Maybe this is a bad excuse or a bad explanation, but you just kind of know how tight things should be. And so far in my 16 years of work at the shop, I have not had anything fall off a vehicle. So I think I'm doing okay on how I've been doing it, if you will. Now, what have you guys been, out in your garages working on things here recently? And if so, what was it and has it gone smoothly? Um, I haven't done too much lately. I've got a few things. This journey actually still needs a thermostat replaced, and then the wife's Chevy Equinox that we just picked up recently. I've got some cool new the GM black badges. So like all of the chrome badges, I'm going to yank off and put the black badges on. My personal Wrangler, I've got a winch and winch plate finally in the mail. So I'm excited to throw that on there and do a cool install video, because this is the Warren winch plate versus the MOPAR winch plate that I've always previously put on vehicles at work. So that will be interesting to see how different or better or not that Warren winch plate is. But along with all the dirt road dirt and dust, there is little rodent, not droppings, but just foam insulation that's scattered all over this engine bay from mice living in this thing. On whatever dirt road these people lived on previously. Now, another thing, spark plugs. I've often had people ask me weird, or not weird, but what spark plugs do you recommend? Would you get this brand or that brand? I am like a massive advocate for factory spark plugs. So we're putting, the factory Iridium spark plugs, which are just a Champion spark plug with the normal Champion number on the side. But if I'm working on a Nissan, I'm going to grab Nissan spark plugs. Typically, I am trying to buy the OEM plug. We just have so many issues with our MOPAR vehicles with aftermarket spark plugs that I'm so ingrained in my mind to only run OEM plugs that, man, I am typically not just buying whatever cool E3 triple diamond fire weird spark plugs. We've had, Jeeps come in with misfires and all kinds of weird runnability issues. And lo and behold, you pull a spark plug out and it's some goofy auto light, copper, super spark, whatever, and it's causing that runnability issue. Let's see, Kyle, how much was school and how much do you make per year as a MOPAR tech? Man, so I didn't go to, well, so we have locally here a local tech school that does aviation, body shop, automotive. It's called Wichita Area Technical College, and it was like a little over a year program, and that was back in 08. So to be honest, I do not remember. And at this point, price from 08 would be completely irrelevant till now, because surely it's a lot more now. But no, I just went to that. Mom and Dad and I drove out to Tech, and we looked at a couple UTI, those big name automotive schools that are real expensive, and you're living there, it's not close to home. And I said, man, I can't. I just couldn't bring myself to spend that kind of money and go to something like that. I'm sure they're good programs, but like I said, I just went to the local, like we happen to have Wichita Area Technical College for their automotive, I don't even remember what it was called, automotive technology, automotive services, something like that. And then, man, what do you make as a MOPAR tech? That just varies so much by your area and the dealership, and again, even with all of that taken into account, your pay typically as a mechanic is called flag hour. You're not paid hourly, you're not paid salary, you're paid by the job. So this tune-up might pay, we have a big labor guide that you can look at that says, this job, you put in the vehicle and it tells you how much each job or repair pays you in hours. So this tune-up might show 2 hours in our labor guide. So if I'm a really fast, efficient technician, I can get this thing in the shop, get it done in 30 minutes. I still get paid those 2 hours. But if I'm a really slow technician and I'm on my phone and scrolling, looking at Facebook and doing everything other than working on a car, that job still only pays me 2 hours if it took me half the day to take all of this apart and put it back together. So it just really varies on what you're going to make per year, per month, per paycheck is how efficient you are, what your dealership pays you per hour. I mean, again, you're starting around, I don't even know. And again, it's going to vary so much. This often comes up on our MOPAR dealership technician little Facebook group. That's a nationwide Facebook group. And, some guys are making 50 plus an hour. We are nowhere near that here in the Kansas area, or at least I'm not. I think your kind of pay range for a technician is, mid 20 an hour up to 50 plus an hour at some of these other states that have, higher cost of living, I guess. So, it can just vary whether you're making, 40,000 a year to, over 100,000 a year. It really varies by your location, your shop, your work that comes into the shop. And again, it's kind of how quickly or how efficiently you are able to work. So yeah, unfortunately that's not an easy cut and dry answer. And even me, who has, I know what my hourly pay is, and but your pay can still vary by thousands and thousands of dollars a month, because if your previous month you had a whole bunch of hours and you made awesome pay, that's awesome. You had a great paycheck, but the next paycheck might be half of what the previous one was, if that makes sense. If all of a sudden it got winter, it slowed down on work, and you have no work to work on, you don't have a minimum or base pay, if you will. So if I go into work and I have no cars to work on, I get paid $0 for that day. There's no guarantee, there's no minimum. I've went into work and made less than 1 hour of work being there from 7:30 to 5:30. So there's good and bad with being a technician on flag hour pay. What engine is the most prone to exploding? Right now, I would say the 2-liter turbo. We have a lot of 2-liter turbo issues at work, whether that be in the Wrangler or the Cherokee. We replace a whole bunch of 2-liter turbos. And again, I always hate speaking poorly on our product, but we replace a lot of them here recently. The motor has good power and seems to run well and do things a motor's supposed to do, but for whatever reason, we have some issues there with the 2-liter turbo. And for whatever reason, it always seems to be cylinder 2. The cylinder 2 ends up with a hole in the piston, or the piston ringland blown off, even on stock ones that aren't modified and turned up power. I just recently did a brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe hybrid. That is the plug-in hybrid, but the engine in that one is the 2-liter turbo, and it had catastrophically come apart. The oil was full of metal. That was a real bad couple of day job. That, again, that multiple day engine replacement paid me about 8 hours of labor. So I worked for free for a day there at the dealership, because again, it's under warranty. You can't get paid more than what that job pays. Been following Grand Cherokee videos, and yeah, so yeah, like my, I've had 13 or 14 Grand Cherokees, and like 80% of them have been 4.7s, because 4.7s are kind of the only ones that break and have issues. The 4 liters are just old tractor motors that kind of keep on going. So again, most of my broken ones that I bought were broken because, or were left for dead for cheap because they were 4.7 liters, whether they had lifter issues or cylinder head issues or whatever, it's kind of a 4.7 thing, as you have found out in your research. But yes, under the hood is very dirty. This thing, I think previously was a dirt road vehicle. So anywhere that was covered underneath other things is filthy, filthy dirty. But other than the dirt, seems to be taken care of and not messed up. So other than a little extra dirt, we are doing pretty good. And now with some fresh spark plugs, it should be even happier. So we've got to get our back spark plugs out here, which are a little less fun since they're underneath the wiper cowl. How's Kelsey? Kelsey is doing good. If you guys don't know, Kelsey is my wife, and she actually has her own channel now, or she's had it for quite a while now, but it recently has been doing well. She's getting ready to go on a trip and see one of her her best friends. But we've been enjoying her new Equinox EV, other than the heater issues, which I don't think I've said really anything in a video. But the Equinox EV has a really goofy heater setup. So now that it's getting cold, or we of course bought it when it was cold, there's been some growing pains with that. But no, she's good. And she is a realtor. And then, like I said, I persuaded her to start filming YouTube stuff, and she's, I think, here lately enjoyed content creation and whatnot on her YouTube channel, which is just like home lifestyle content. So okay, we're getting our back spark plugs out here finally. Maybe we got to get a shorter extension. You guys can't see the floor, but there is tools all over the floor. You guys can kind of see the Milwaukee bag down here. So, like I said, the only other thing I need to do to this thing today is throw a thermostat in it, because we've got a thermostat rationality code. I was really hoping to find a really nasty worn out plug more than the others, but so far they are all pretty evenly worn. There always seems to be like one bad one in the bunch normally. Ooh, I guess I haven't looked into the AEV engine skid for the 392. I guess no, I haven't looked into it, and B, I guess I didn't know they had one I don't know if, I can't remember if you can normally buy individual components from AEV on stuff like that or not, or does that only come in their like the turnkey vehicles you buy from them? I don't know. I will have to do some research because I need to do something. I've got the Next Venture Motorsports skid plate on mine, and man, I'm not terribly happy with it. I assume you probably watched that video potentially, and the fit is not great. It doesn't even cover all of the exhaust pipe area. Honestly, I was tempted to call Next Venture Motorsports and say, hey guys, let's do something here. Here's what we need to do. The exhaust crossover piece, it needs to be wider. It needs to cover more of the exhaust. See if maybe they're willing to revise their design. I'm sure they'll tell me to go kick rocks, but it's probably worth at least a phone call to them to see if they want to revise it or at least have some good suggestions. I don't know. Again, they're going to tell me to go kick rocks, but it is unfortunate on its fitment. But no, I need to do some looking on the AEV one, at least see if I can see some pictures of the thing and see what it looks like. Yeah, that plug's pretty bad. Let's see. So you can see on that worn spark plug, you can see that tip here is kind of worn at an angle. We're more worn over here than we are on that side. So decent little difference in the two. Be interesting to see if this thing picks up any fuel economy. Probably not really measurable or noticeable, but again, the engine has to be happier with a fresh set of spark plugs in it. These are typically due every 100,000 miles on the 3.6s. So I would assume these are original. Again, it's kind of hard for me to know since this vehicle, don't have any service history on it. And I can't even remember if I put these other spark plugs in or not. Probably not. But it is. I've been driving this thing around this journey here. This is the V6 front wheel drive only, and it's always funny. This is basically the same powertrain in this as this is a V6 with a 6-speed transmission as a JK Wrangler. A JK getting 15 miles to the gallon, but this thing gets 21 miles to the gallon. It's just funny, the same powertrain getting such drastically different fuel economy. Roddy, wish we had easier access to proper tools here in Brazil to work on our own cars. Yeah, I guess maybe big shop equipment stuff, and I'm sure, well, I guess I'm not sure because I don't really know, but all of our hand tool stuff, I would assume you can order online, but I think some places, I think like Australia and stuff, they charge insanely high like taxes or something for shipping and like importing stuff over there. So that might be a situation where it's outrageously expensive to get something. But I think in Brazil, you probably have all of the cool diesel Grand Cherokee WJs, if I'm not mistaken. I've always wanted to at least drive one of those things. Again, I would assume Brazil is one of the places. It seems like everywhere else other than the United States, you could get the WJ Grand Cherokees with like 2 different diesels. There was And I have no information on either of these. I know there's one diesel that's the good one and one that's the bad one. It would be really cool to at least drive one. I'm sure we would be really screwed on getting parts for one of those since we never had them here. But we are almost done here. And the best part of this thing, even though we found a whole bunch of rodent shoe marks, like here is our, this is the little insulation piece that goes on the valve cover below the intake manifold. All of this, all of this is from a mouse chewing on the insulation. He was pretty hungry. He was building a nest somewhere, and maybe it was not in the vehicle, but yeah, all of this is from a mouse chewing apart this insulation to make a nice warm nest for the winter, one winter, no idea when. This is a 2017 Dodge Journey, so it could have happened many years ago. But again, you are then always hopeful not to see chewed wiring. And to be honest, I see absolutely nothing that would indicate we've got a rodent currently living here, or that had lived here and chewed things up, because mice are really not nice to vehicles. Well, guys, I guess I'm probably going to call it here. I hadn't went live for a long time. I kind of wanted to make sure everything still worked. This is the new microphone setup that I've recently got, so I kind of wanted to play with it with live and getting everything working and moving. And it seems to go well, or it seemed to went well. And we've got some spark plugs in the Journey now. I need to get all of the intake thrown back on, and then I think, even though it's not very cool, I'm going to do a video on the thermostat. Not that this is hard to do, but the importance of getting a MOPAR thermostat for the 3.6 liter engines in the Wrangler, in the everything. We have seen a massively high fail rate for aftermarket thermostats. What I mean by aftermarket is any of the brands you're buying online, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, all of those thermostats, we have found that those, when they're failing, are failing closed and overheating and killing the 3.6 liters, causing cylinder heads to warp, causing head gaskets to go bad. So it is exceedingly important that if you are replacing the thermostat on your 3.6 liter, you are putting a factory OEM MOPAR thermostat. I cannot recommend any other brands, only the MOPAR. If the MOPARs are failing, they're failing open and not heating up quick enough. That's what this one has. This one has a MOPAR thermostat, but it does have thermostat rationality code. But I've been driving the thing because it's not overheating. It's just, again, not heating up quick enough, if that makes sense. But we have had a huge amount of 3.6s in the dealership with warped cylinder heads from an overheat issue. And then you look and they've got an aftermarket thermostat. So every 3.6 that I've had in the shop, not even with a overheating or thermostat issue, during my inspection, if I see that they've got an aftermarket thermostat, I am suggesting replacing with a MOPAR thermostat. I probably look like some sleazy dealership technician suggesting replacement of a part that's not even currently bad, but I've just seen way too many of them failing and killing engines. Cylinder heads need to come off, get replaced, to replace head gaskets. It's a massive endeavor on the 3.6 when you are tearing into one of these things to do that because of a $100 thermostat that failed and caused the engine to overheat. Let's see, Grand, you did water pump on your 0253 Silverado. That's something I've never done before because I typically don't ever work on them. So I think those are nice to work on. Maybe, maybe not. I can't really remember. Do you think 150K miles is reasonably obtainable for a TRX? And if so, do you have any special recommend? I would think so. The only the only TRX that I've ever had issues with is my own darn thing. That one had loose cylinder head bolts from the factory and was burning coolant, getting coolant into the cylinder. But I work on a lot of TRXs at the dealership, and I can't think of a single one that had a engine or powertrain issue. And I've got a couple of them that come in with some decent mileage, nowhere near 150 yet, but I've got a couple that come in around 60,000 miles on them now, and those things are still completely fine. What maintenance things? I think our spark plugs on a TRX are due every 60K. You know, that would be beneficial to do those. Our fluids, the transfer case fluid would be something that I would want to routinely, probably every 30,000 miles change, because that is a clutch type transfer case. We've got clutches that have to apply for our four-wheel drive system. That requires a special Borg-Warner fluid because that's the brand of the transfer case. As far as I know, that's only available at the dealership or obviously online. I've got a TRX like maintenance driveline fluid video that should have those part numbers in there. But I would want to, again, probably every 30,000 miles, at least be doing my transfer case fluid to keep those clutches happy. But no, I mean, unless the truck's modded and being beat on every day, I don't know a reason why a TRX wouldn't make it 150K. The ZF transmissions are great. So no, that should be very obtainable, pending you, again, keep your maintenance in check. I'm doing my oil changes every 5,000 miles, yada, yada. But no, nothing special really needs to be done on those things to keep them happy. They just, so far have been really good, other than my truck with those loose cylinder head bolts. Well, guys, I think I'm going to call it here. We've got our fresh spark plugs put in. I need to get my intake thrown back on, and then this thing will be ready for another 140-something thousand miles, or at least another 100,000 miles till the intake needs to come back off to do spark plugs again. So, guys, thanks for coming out into the garage with me on this Sunday. What time is it? It is 2:44 already, and I really appreciate you guys chatting here in the chat, and I will hopefully see you guys next time.